In this video, I will show you how to make great bass lines without even thinking. I can almost guarantee that by the end of the video you will learn something, regardless of your level of experience. This in-depth video is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, I will show you the 3 most common type of basses, how to use them, and when to use each one of them for the best possible result. In the second part, I will show you 3 simple tricks that will allow you to always play the right notes and never get stuck on a bass line ever again. And in the third and last part, I will show you the best ways to place the bass lines in your composition. And stick until the end of the video for a little bonus. I'm Roko Sensei, better known as Roko Tensei, and I am a professional music producer. My goal is to help you be the best producers you can be. If you like the content, make sure to leave a like for the YouTube algorithm. Let's get right into it. Today's music is mainly dominated by 3 types of basses: the electric bass, the synth bass, and the sub bass, or 808. Let me break them down one by one. Starting with the electric bass. This type of bass is oftentimes used in R&B, pop, and rock. Electric bass lines tend to have more movement. This is due to the sustain of this type of bass, which tends to be shorter. Of course, these are generalizations. Here are 2 examples of electric bass lines. And this one. When should I use this type of bass? You can use it when you deal with acoustic instruments, or when you're making a more upbeat instrumental. As you can see, we can play a lot of notes on this type of bass. Let's talk about 808 and sub bass. The 808 basses are used in almost any genre. Notably in hip-hop and electronic music. In hip-hop, it's a little bit more distorted. These basses tend to have less movement. They strictly follow the chord progression. That is due to the long release, making it less flexible. They also use slides. Here are 2 examples of sub basses and 808s. And when should you use it? I think that the real question is when you should not use it. I feel like a lot of producers really overuse this type of bass because of habits and lack of options. I know that it was the case for me in the beginning. This type of bass usually goes very well with snappy hi-hats or hip-hop in general. Now let's talk real quick about the synth bass. Synth basses are used in a lot of genres. They don't necessarily have a distinct sound. They can range from R&B basses to dubstep basses. Usually a synth bass won't be the main bass, but it can help in the song transition. Let me give you 2 examples. Perfect, now we know what type of bass we want to use. Now we just need to know what notes we're going to play with that bass. I will mostly use an electronic bass for this example since it offers the most amount of options. Step 1 is to find the root note of the progression. In most cases, the last note of the chord is the root note. I just want to show you how it would look like if the root note is not the last note. For example, in this case, this A could be played on another octave, leaving E as the last note. That would not mean that E is the root note. The root note is still A. If you don't know whether or not you're playing the root note, simply play every note in the chord. The root will 99% of the times be there. Now step number 2 is adding more notes to make the bass line more interesting. Do not do this with 808s, it will almost never work. So there are 3 safe notes that we can always play, and these are the 5th. So we take 1 note and we simply go 7 semitones up or 5 down. Then we have the octave, simply the same note but higher or lower. In this case A5. And then the semitone. Semitone is simply 1 note higher or 1 note lower. Let me give an example of a bass line that I made just applying those 3 simple techniques. Now I can break it down. As you can see, the first note is A, and I am simply using the octave technique, going from A4 to A3, then to A4 again. Knowing that the next note is going to be D, before going into D, I'm going to D sharp, that is 1 semitone higher than D. So it sounds like this. Then on G I keep it very simple, just playing G, and then you can see that here, instead of going to C directly, I first go to D, since it's the 5th of G, and then from D I go to C sharp, and then to C. Then the C is 1 octave higher. So in this specific phrase, I'm using all 3 of the techniques that I showed you. Then we have those 3 techniques used very fast. Let me show you. As you can see, from C5, I'm doing the octave technique, going to C4, but before that, I'm making a quick stop at C sharp, since C sharp is before C. And then I want to go again to C, and I make a quick stop at G, that is the 5th of C. Something very important to say about the semitone is that I only use the semitone as a transition note. If I were to use the semitone as a landing note, it would sound very strange. Let me show you. Ending on a C gives a feeling of coming back home and is way more powerful. 80% of the bass line is simply the rhythm. Something I highly suggest you to do is to only play one note when you write the bass line so that you're more focused on rhythm. We're working with an 808, we can also use slides. I prefer to using them across octaves like this. You can see the slide on D goes up and the one on E goes down. If you would like to improve your music career with weekly videos made by a professional, I invite you to subscribe. Thank you for your time. Now that we know what bass to use and what notes to play, I want to talk about how we can use the basses in the context of a beat. Most beats that are here tend to only use one bass, and I think that that is a huge waste of potential. You can use a secondary bass in your beats. Here is a list of scenarios in which you can use multiple basses. Number 1, synth bass before hook. Number 2, electric bass in the verse. Number 3, 808 change in the verse. Number 4, 2 basses playing at the same time. Let's take a hip-hop beat as an example. As you can hear, the main bass is an 808, but in the pre-chorus, I added a secondary bass. Let me demonstrate. Another example is with this beat. It uses a very long synth bass in the hook, and then in the verse it uses a very short synth bass. Let me demonstrate. Here's an example of 2 basses playing at the same time. As you will see, the intro introduces one bass, and then the hook introduces another bass, without the first one stopping. For this to work properly, you need to take out the low frequencies on one of the 2 basses. Since you have been watching the video until now, I'm going to give you the little bonus I promised in the beginning. That bonus is simply how to make this bass. Let me show you the bass I'm talking about. Okay, pretty simple. So we go on the sub bass on Serum, we add a sine wave -2, then we activate the oscillator A, -1 octave, 16 voices, 0.15 detune, and then we add the filter. MG low 24, 250 Hz. That's it, very simple. It's a synth bass that you can use for your transitions. It's super effective. Let me do a quick recap of the video. So there is mainly 3 types of basses: the electric bass, the synth bass, the 808 has less movement, the synth bass can be everything, and the electric bass has more movement usually. To write bass lines, you play the root notes of the chords. You can also play the fifth, the octave, and the semitone. And in one beat, you can use multiple basses. For example, a synth bass before the hook, an E bass in the verse, an 808 change in the verse, and 2 basses playing at the same time. If this video helped you, do not hesitate to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.